Okay, everybody, so this is my review of the Wheel of Time episode 5, Blood Calls Blood. This was directed by Sally Richardson Whitfield and written by Celine Song. As always, no book spoilers in the comments, please. You can only talk about stuff from the books we've seen in the show already, but nothing in the future. Please be respectful of that. These reviews I'm doing is from someone I haven't read the books, so I'm going at this as a show and learning the stuff as we go along, so please keep it that way. Really appreciate it. So with this review, we'll start with the main storyline, and then we'll finish off with what's going on with Iguain and Perrin. So we open with this snowy funeral right where we left off, and we're seeing everybody mourning all the people who were killed by Logain and his army. And what I really like this episode is doing is this worry that is happening between Lan and Moiraine, and that's a tribute to Daniel Henney, the actor of Lan, who really shines this episode, and as always, Rosamund Pike, and the chemistry they have built to earn these emotional moments, but just them acting with their faces this whole episode was great, because right from just this scene in the beginning, they're having doubts now, seeing how Stepan is and where he's at emotionally losing his Aes Sedai, and that will go on throughout the episode. And what happens here is we get a month time jump here in all stories. So that was kind of shocking to me, but I actually liked it to keep kind of moving the story along here. I like how they wrote little character moments to learn more about the characters here that are subtle and not so on the nose, but I really like this moment when Moiraine is telling Lan that her real home is this saddle, these boots, this brooding man at my side, not the White Tower, which is interesting. And there's a line here when they're arriving at the White Tower that Lan says that warders aren't supposed to outlive their Aes Sedai. And it kind of reminds you too that saying like parents aren't supposed to watch their children die. And that kind of symbolically shows here with this relationship of a warder and an Aes Sedai. And again, just adds to the weight that will come at the end of this episode. And what I like about this episode is really the episode you would think is about Stepan and what he's going through, but it's not. It's really to develop this worry that Lan and Moiraine have in their relationship and develop their relationship. And they also show quickly in this scene that there's a little moment here that Moiraine mentions to Lan that she should know how Nynaeve is feeling because she's always around him. So I don't know if that's a little jealousy, a little threat there, but I do like that. And that does come back around later when Stepan says to Lan that Nynaeve clearly is falling for you. So I like that this kind of developing this triangle a bit, and it could set up now some tension for Moiraine and keeping an eye on how close Nynaeve is getting to Lan. So Mat now and Rand get to Tar Valon, and this is where they're staying to rest and clean up before they go to the White Tower. And what I did like here and how this was just written was that Mat feels responsible for the death of this little girl he got close to and her family at the farm. And Rand says to him, it was the Fade, you wouldn't kill that family, you wouldn't hurt that little girl. But when he says that, it's a close-up on Mat's face that looks very guilty. So now, as the audience, we see that and go, wait a minute, so it wasn't the Fade who killed that family, it was Mat. Even though he pointed out the Fade, it was Mat and his craziness here. But he also has a big important line saying that Tom is dead, so in this month time jump, Tom dies, or at least we believe, but how can we even trust Mat when he says anything at this point? So that's all interesting stuff for sure, and is intriguing mystery to understand, like, okay, what happened to Tom during this, and did he kill that family, Mat? So I like what they're doing there with those two. So inevitable, there's going to always be in fantasy shows now comparisons to Game of Thrones, which is the high standard of fantasy television. Where I first started really feeling this felt like Game of Thrones in good ways was when Moiraine is talking to Nynaeve in the White Tower and talking about the White Tower and the Aes Sedai. And it feels a lot like King's Landing, the way they talk about it and the politics of it, and that everyone has their own agenda and to be careful. And that Nynaeve is going to have to become a novice here and train to be an Aes Sedai because news is going to spread quickly about her and her power, and that everyone's going to want a piece of that, prize that Nynaeve is, right? That she's this powerful person. All these different colors of the Aes Sedai will want her in their group. I like this line Moiraine says, too, about the Aes Sedai, where these are women that are, decades of training, mastering their strengths, but masking their weaknesses, which I thought was really interesting, and giving all these characters flaws, which I like. But I'm also going to give a shout out to someone who's really coming into her own as an actress here, which is Zoe Robbins, who is just incredible to me in this role of Nynaeve, because with Nynaeve, she's playing it with fear but also bravery. It's a perfect blend she's doing in her face, and she's really good with her eyes acting, which is always the key. And a moment that stood out for me is just her saying this line: if I'm as powerful as you say I am, maybe you Aes Sedai should be afraid of me. Really like that, and that gets you also intrigued for what's going to happen with her character. And there's a good just theme here with Moiraine trying to relate to where Nynaeve is, and that feeling of finding this power you have, realizing the source that you touched is stronger than you will ever be, and how small it makes you feel, but you also feel bigger than the people you love and know, and where do you fit in that weird middle you're in. So I like that moment here, and the way Moiraine is talking to her and saying that embrace the gift, and I will stay here, I'll protect you as best as I can, and of course when I find your friends I'll bring them to you. I just trust her less and less as this show is going out, Moiraine. I feel like you're supposed to, and they're doing a good job of getting you trying to figure out Moiraine, and like one moment you really like her and trust her, and the other, something else is up, and she has these secrets that we're learning more and more about, meaning not learning about the secrets she has, but that she has all these secrets that people keep talking about. So it makes you really see this character as a very mysterious character, which is always intriguing. So we meet a new character who seems like a lot of comic relief here and is going to be a fan favorite, which is this not Ogier, Loyal. It's interesting. He's mentioning a lot Rand's red hair and is claiming he's an Iguain, I think is what he's saying. I have no idea what that is. Haven't read the books, but it should be important that maybe Rand's not who we exactly think he is. And we also see now that Rand and Mat see this ritual they do where they're having the Aes Sedai go through the streets and show this false dragon and what could happen to you if you try that. And he's just got no soul, basically, like Tom was alluding to, what happens when they basically gentle you, the Aes Sedai. And there's this moment where Mat sees Logain and he's literally laughing at him. And is it all in Mat's head in the madness, or is that really a connection they're having? And he's seeing that in Mat. I wonder, and I think it's the latter there for sure. But Rand talks to Mat, and Mat wants to make a deal with Rand, like, look, we're not letting each other get to that level of one of us can channel, period. And that will go more into that kind of conflict there later in the episode, which we're going to get to. But back to what's happening with Steppen here. He's very emo as this episode goes on. Just props to this actor here, who unfortunately dies at the end, but was a treat and really stepped to the plate in this episode. And, he did such a good job of showing the emotions of Steppen get more depressed, feeling the pain, more of losing his Aes Sedai as the episode went on. And again, what it's really serving, though, is what's happening with Lan and Moraine's relationship and Lan's character, because Lan's watching this man suffering up close throughout the episode, and it is, at the end of the day, scaring him. And that, like, oh my God, if I was ever to lose Moiraine, is this what's going to happen to me? And even when Lan just mentions that to Steppen about going to his next Aes Sedai, he snaps and he's like, it's not easy just to go from one woman to the next. But this is where, this questionable choice Nynaeve makes here, where Steppen shows up to her looking for some sleepy time tea, we'll call it. And he's talking about how he can't sleep. And she's asking, like, how are you feeling? Are you able to at all fall asleep? And he's like, just about to drift off. The pain goes away. And she's like, good, because that would sound normally like a good thing. But he's like, no, that's the only thing I've left of her, the pain. And he's like, attached to that, I'm not ready to let go of it. And he's hiding a bottle of booze while he's saying this. He's clearly in a really bad state. And she's like, don't worry, I promise you the pain will never go away. But she still gives him this sleepy time tea. And we know she knows more about that tea and what people could possibly do with it, because she later on tells a story to Rand about what happened with Iguain as a child, and that they were going to give her that tea to make it easy for her to die. Basically, that's its main purpose. Yeah, to put you to sleep, but also to help ease pain of death. And it's like, to me, she was giving somebody the noose here. I don't know if she was not really realizing what she was doing, or was she? So that was interesting to me. And I'm sure that's going to come back around in Nynaeve's character. And that we see kind of her face at the funeral of Steppen, and there does seem like a little bit of like guilt or, oh my God, what have I done in there? But we'll see, because maybe I'm putting a stretch there that she was aware of what she was actually doing. But I also love a moment here with Nynaeve where she is looking at the statues of the warders in the past. I love that that is the production design around the conversation that happens when Liandrin shows up to her, because we're learning about Liandrin and the woman in the red, and that they don't have warders. And this is what Nynaeve says, that they hate men the red. And I love, she's like, is that a question or a statement? Liandrin says. And she's like, women hold the one power, but men still control much of this world. Men are rarely kind to little girls who show a spark of being greater than they are. So what I love about that line is finally getting insight into Liandrin behind this mask she always puts on. She always has a mask on. but we're seeing that taken off in just a little line like that. So it's really good writing to learn more about Liandrin, more about the world, and more about the woman in red, the Aes Sedai. And it's already showing you, it's like almost like it reminds you of Littlefinger from Game of Thrones, Liandrin sometimes, and already just Nynaeve, you can't always protect her how Moiraine wants to, and just her being out in the open like that already, Liandrin's getting her claws into her. But literally, this is something I did not like about the episode. It was bizarre. Was the next scene, it just jumps to Loial, the Ogier, saying he has access to the White Tower, and he appears with Nynaeve, Tyrande, and Mat. It was bizarre. It felt like a scene was missing. I did not like this. This was way too jumpy of an edit. You needed something in the middle there, because we just literally saw Nynaeve talking to Liandrin in the White Tower to go to the next scene of this Ogier getting her and bringing her to Mat and Rand. It was like, whoa. Like, you need to, if you're not gonna, show the scene maybe when he gets Nynaeve, the Ogier, you gotta have a different scene in between of another story. Something to make that not feel as abrupt. That was just not a good editing choice at all. But we see here that Nynaeve sees, obviously, clearly something's wrong with Mat, because when she goes to see his tongue, he snaps at her. So that's just going to be interesting what happens there with Mat, and clearly Nynaeve's going to have to make a choice of what she's going to do with Mat and what she can do in her powers to help him. And it's interesting. I love the conversation here with Rand and Nynaeve, and they're talking about how Rand thinks Mat can channel. So this goes back to the conversation we had with Mat earlier and what you do about that, and wanting to protect Mat from, going full crazy and possibly getting gentled by an Aes Sedai. And, Rand is the one who's on to Moiraine here, that he doesn't know if they can trust her. And I like that him and Nynaeve are kind of on the same page. Like, we don't need the Aes Sedai, like, I'll hear what I can, and when Iguain and Perrin show up, we'll sort the rest. But I don't know if this will go in a tragedy way of kind of like Game of Thrones, where your original crew of people get separated and they have aspirations to stick together, but things get messy, right? You meet other people that have other agendas, and that's usually not what's going to happen. But we'll see what happens here. But they're developing here to lead into the scene with Iguain, which we'll get to, about how resilient she is, and that Iguain is many things, but above all else, unbreakable, talking about the story where she literally had this infection that was like breaking her bones on herself, but she didn't take this tea and just stuck through it, and the fever went away, and she stayed alive. Now, in this main story, I like, too, this Liandrin and Moiraine scene. So all these scenes, they're a little more talky this episode, but they're important. And it's a lot of politics stuff that the show's showing it's going to do now, which I like, because it's all interesting. And it's like, Liandrin says to Moiraine, problem with you coming and going. When Nynaeve becomes a novice, you won't be here to guide her. So that's clearly going to be important, what she's saying there. Something we're going to see, a problem here. And I like the actress of Liandrin throws in this little line, too, where she's like, it's just stressing how much Nynaeve, though, doesn't trust Aes Sedai. But she mentions she has a certain force of will, and she thinks it will be her rules, that she has that red in her. That's a trait of them. But Moiraine mentions one thing she doesn't share with them is their contempt for men. That's the difference. So it's also just developing again that, these different colors of the Aes Sedai are going to want Nynaeve clear because she's so powerful, but who will get her? And where does she really fit? But I'm going to go with that she doesn't fit in any of these groups. So we'll see. That maybe she'll be the one to kind of take down any corruption in the Aes Sedai. And then there's another important scene where Moiraine now talks to Alanna, and, Moiraine mentions there's a way to release the bond between a warder and an Aes Sedai. So this is showing you what was developed in this episode already with just looks between Moiraine and Lan, that, maybe this bond isn't the greatest idea. Maybe this is just going to cause us extreme hurt later on. But Alana's like, don't do that. Lan has nothing to worry about. You're going to be okay. But this is a huge pause Moiraine has at this line. And she's like, what have you been doing out, all these years? Alana says to Moiraine. She doesn't answer. She ditches the question. So that's also contributing to the fear that Moraine's having, that, yeah, I could easily maybe die because of this risky stuff that her and Lan do. And she doesn't want Lan to suffer like Steppen is. And we're also getting more information. Again, still interesting, so I'm not bored by this, is that Alana's saying that basically their boss wants to come now for answers for what happened here with Logain, why they had to gentle. And she's like, you were the only one strong enough to challenge her. And this lets us know that Moiraine has no designs on the seat. She says, I never have. But where Alana really wants Moiraine to be the one, if there was to be someone to be the next kind of boss of the Aes Sedai, is that, we'd rather have you than Liandrin, because she's getting momentum here, and not just the red are the only ones following her. She's saying other Aes Sedai of different colors are as well. So this is really interesting. And she even says, too, again, adding into the mystery of Moraine's character, that one day you have to trust someone with your secrets. And what are these secrets? We don't really know much yet. So she looks into this painting in her room too. I don't know what the deal is with that frame. I'm sure book readers do. But again, please don't spoil that. But there's a lot going on here. And I'm trying to process it all as best I can. Not reading the books, but it's exciting me. So as a TV viewer, I'm very, very intrigued. And this episode's doing a good job of that. It's setting up a lot of interesting pieces, as it is also a transitional episode, but developing a lot of character. And we get more themes here where Stepan now is talking to Lan, and I was saying before how he brought up to Lan how Nynaeve is following for her, and that he sees everything Stepan, and Lan's, the quiet type, doesn't really talk about it as much. But Lan's like, that's a bad idea for her. And Stepan's like, love's always a bad idea, but we still allow it to happen, or this life would be intolerable. So this is an important theme just about the episode and what the story's kind of saying, that, it's still worth the end of the day to have these deep bonds, even though it's painful if something ever happens to it. But Lan's like, well, I can tolerate a lot. So he's not someone who's right in that same mindset as Stepan. So it's interesting, and it's going to make you think if he's going to be one even to push to Moiraine, maybe they should separate their bond. So what's interesting here is, though, Stepan gave Lan the sleepy time tea as well. So he wakes up sluggish and is in his deep sleep when he wakes up. Then he finds the tea on the counter, realizes what he has been given, but he also sees the knife is missing from the mantle. Right there, he's connecting, oh my god, Stepan's done something stupid and hurt himself. And he kills himself in the statue of the Room of Former Warders, which I like that touch. And we see the Stepan funeral, so important. And this is really where Daniel Henney brings it here, as always, is Rosamund Pike in their connection of what their facial expressions are saying to each other, and her crying and seeing him suffer like this, losing this warder, and that this could happen with us. Is this worth it, And we finally see Lan break now, and he's taken off his strong mask, and you're seeing the suffering has losing Stepan. It's just a powerful moment and a great moment in the episode on. I loved it. I love the ending scene here. So that's going to bring the score way up for me in this episode. Before I give my final score and what I really think of the whole episode, let's now go to the other side of the story here with Iguain and Perrin. So we see the White Cloaks show up to these Tinkers, right? I love this character of Valda. He just eats up the screen. He's great. The actor is Abdul Salas. He's just killing it, and he really gets to shine this episode. But we see the Tinkers are doing like this peaceful wall because they're non-violent, but they just get beat up here. This is actually a crazy scene to me and interesting. I liked it. It felt different and unique than in most shows we see how this just kind of went about. But we don't know what happens to the Tinkers yet. We just kind of see them getting beat up by the White Cloaks, and they get to capture now Iguain and Perrin. Now, this is some of the most tension we've seen in this show yet, and I loved were these scenes where we see Perrin and Iguain are tied down in Valda's tent. Now, again, like I said, Abdul Salas, who's the actor of Valda, he's killing it. He's really bringing this scene to the next level. And it's a great written scene and planned out scene because it's this tension of, is she an Aes Sedai or not? And I love he gives the ultimatum, like, if you're an Aes Sedai, show me that you can channel and I'll kill you and let him go, or vice versa. If you don't, I'll kill him and let you go. So it's like really crazy, but you get already this reveal when he cuts Perrin open that he's got these yellow eyes. So he's got this like power we don't know, right? But we get a wraparound at the end that power is related to wolves, because they have the yellow eyes he sees, and that wolf wasn't going to hurt them, and he knew that clearly because he's got this connection to wolves. So we'll see what that's all about. Again, book readers, I know you're chomping at the bits to answer that question, but don't, please. Keep that mystery alive. But I love the lines they give Valda here. And he says this line, idea that one power comes from anywhere but the dark is absurd. And I love that line because it really just explains his belief system. And again, that these people in the White Cloaks, they just believe all these powerful people use the power. It always comes from the dark. So they want to get rid of it. And that's why they hate Aes Sedai and women in general. But I have two issues here in these two scenes in the tent with these three. Because one, in the first incident when it's light out and they're in the tent, the score is ruining this scene. The score is abysmal here, which is unfortunate, but it sets the mood and it does not match here, and it's just cheesy sounding. It's a mess. And it sucks that that's the case because it would really be an amazing scene if they didn't have such a poor score behind it. I'm also going to put Madeleine Madden, who plays Iguain, on the watch list. What I mean by that is I'm not there yet saying she's an amazing actress. And I'm not saying she's a bad actress either. I'm just saying her performance in these sequences was questionable to me. And I judge that by, am I buying it? Am I always watching it thinking someone is that character? Or do I get taken out of it watching somebody knowing they're acting? And I felt like some of this, I felt like I was watching somebody act. And that really happens here when Perrin's having this big moment talking about how, he killed his wife, and she's got these important lines like, one day you're going to realize it wasn't your fault. But her facial reactions to him saying this stuff, she's looking at the camera at one point. I'm not buying she's fully in the moment. I was thrown off by it, honestly, and a little disappointed. But that's just how I feel. Again, I'm not saying she's a bad actress, but I'm just saying that I felt like the performance here wasn't great. So she's on the watch list for me of like, okay, is she going to bring it for this big part? It's, to me, we'll see. I'm not sold yet. But we see she can channel now, and she rips Perrin out of him being tied up, and then he scares Valda, but of course she doesn't kill him. She just stabs him, which is like, okay, a little bit of a rolling eye moment. Like, why not just kill this evil person who's just going to do more harm being alive? But she's able to take, you know, the rings of the other Aes Sedai that were killed by him, which is important, I guess. It's going to come around for sure. And we get this reveal about the wolf powers for Perrin. So it's exciting stuff, and still was 2 great scenes. Again, very tense. I'm nitpicking at parts, but again, we want perfection, right? So again, the score was really weak here, and Madden, not sold yet. But we'll see. Much more time to go here. But, you know, when I'm watching this episode, I'm watching last 2 episodes, I think were really good. What it looks like to me is season 1 of Wheel of Time is going to have its shaky things, like I've said about CGI, some of the costumes, you know, and in particular, a lot of the score, which has been disappointing. It doesn't really have its own voice or sound that you want to stick out in a show like this. But this stuff can be fixed in a season 2 and season 3, and that's usually what happens. You're going to see stuff in season 1 of the shows that seems sloppy or weird, and then it finds its footing and it can fix those things. So I think that's the kind of going to be the case with season 1. We're going to have some stuff where you're like, ooh, you know, but I think if they're smart, they'll work on this stuff and can clearly be fixed and take this show to its high ceiling it has, that it could be amazing. So I think it could get there in a season 2, but you're going to have some stuff in season 1 that feels kind of sloppy, and that's stuff that can be fixed clearly, so it gives you hope for the show in general. But I'm giving this episode an 8.8 like I did the last episode. I think it's just as good. It has a lot of more dialogue in it, less action, but really important dialogue. And again, every scene is serving a purpose here, which is really good. And that's what you want, and it's still not confusing, which is good. It's not confusing me. I thought the first episode was a little confusing, but now I feel like I'm settled in. I'm like, as someone who hasn't read the books, I'm enjoying it, and I'm liking the characters, and a lot of the acting's great here. So I'm excited. I'm in, you know, and yeah, it's becoming one of my favorite shows now. So let me know, though, what you thought of it down below. Again, with no book spoilers, please. Just talking about stuff we've already seen in the show. You can talk about from the books, but nothing in the future. Let me know your thoughts. So I read every comment, try to respond to as many as I can. And please make sure to subscribe if you like what I do here. I really appreciate it. It helps me in so many ways you have no idea. And if you love what I do, I'd really appreciate if you can become a member. You'll get special perks, and it will help me do this full time one day, and it will support me and help me make more videos for you guys. I'd be forever grateful. And please follow me at Steve Varley Show on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok for more of me. And I'll see you next time.